Well, fresh on the heels of the very first D9200 repair on the channel, we now have our second D9200. And I had mentioned in that video that I was going to take a break or to take a step away from these because I had 5 of these in total. And we had fixed the first one and it was such a nightmare. I was going to take a step away and come back to them later and work on some other stuff in the meantime to try and collect my thoughts and just kind of, recover from trying to fix that one. But in the process, I had to go through those other 4 and at least test them to see what was wrong with them so I knew what I was dealing with. And 3 of them are in various states of disrepair where it's going to need a deep dive into the problem. But this one's actually operational and working, except for one major issue, which the only reason I'm making this video is because I'm 99.64857% sure that I already know what the problem is based off previous experience. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a nice, quick, and easy fix. So that's why we're doing the second one on the heels of the first one, even though I am contradicting myself by what I said. So anyway, what's happening here is that this is operational completely, except that it's just a gray screen on all 3 inputs. We have raster, we have high voltage, but for 15, 25, and 31, all 3 inputs, it's just a gray screen. And the OSD doesn't come up either. So I am pretty sure I know what the problem is. There is an IC on the neck board. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. That guy right there. I am positive that is the problem with this monitor. Now this has never been worked on. All original caps, no one's got any reflow work. This is taken off a system that died and put on a shelf and never used again. So I'm the first person to ever work on this, which is good for us, or good for me. So what I need to do is I'm going to remove that chip and replace it. But before I do, I'm going to show you what's actually wrong, or what this looks like. And I actually have, I showed in the last video here, I'm going to pull out my little box of parts here. So I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these ICs for just this very reason, because I've encountered this in the past. So we're going to replace that IC, and I'm absolutely positive that's going to be the fault. So let me turn this on. We're set to VGA currently because I want to show all 3 inputs. So here's a 16.1, and we're set up to VGA on the VGA input on the input board here. VGA is to the right and CGA, EGA is to the left there. So we're going to turn this on. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, fires right up. And here's what we get. Gray screen. If we hit our mode button, nothing. If I hold it down like the last video and push hard, nothing. So, no VGA. If I turn this off and we swap our selector connector over to CGA, EGA, there we go. We turn our TPG on. It's currently set to medium res. We'll turn this back on. Okay, fires right up. And for medium res, gray screen. If we turn this off, standard, back on, gray screen. So, that's the problem. And I will say that I did find out what this HV pot does. I want to mention this as a kind individual was able to inform me that this HV adjust pot is not B+. It's related to how much high voltage the flyback is allowed to send to the picture tube through the anode. So, for instance, 15,000 volts, 25,000 volts, 35,000 volts, 40,000 volts, that's what this is limiting. So I've got it set back to about 11 o'clock. I think, in my experience, anything higher than about 11 o'clock, if you go to 12, it starts to crack and pop because there's too much high voltage being sent. So I like to put it about 11 o'clock, and that's where it needs to set, in my opinion. I mean, I don't have any documentation of what it's supposed to do. I'd have to have a high voltage probe and find out what it's supposed to be set to and then adjust this accordingly, but I don't have that equipment. And in my experience, about 11 o'clock is sufficient to have it run operationally sound, so I just put about 11 o'clock and call it good. That's why this is the amateur channel, so take that with a grain of salt. So we'll turn this back off so we don't kill our battery. And I did verify that with a replacement neck board that's known working, the image is solved. So I just wanted to show you what it's actually doing, and I'm not going to actually turn this unless we change. I'm going to change the chip out. That's the whole goal of this. I'm going to change this chip out, and if it doesn't fix the problem, then I'll hook this one up and we can show you that it's actually not a main board issue. But in my troubleshooting off camera, I hooked this up and I had my full picture, colors, everything, a normal correct image, I should say. So it's 100% a neck board problem. But I know it's this chip. I bet the farm on that this chip is the fault. So that's why I actually have, a bunch of them in reserve. I've seen this before. So I'm going to change that chip out, and then we're going to test it again. And if it doesn't fix it, then we'll hook this up just to show you that it's not a main board problem, and then try and troubleshoot again from there. So let's get that chip changed out and go from there and see what happens. Well, here we are. The neck board is removed. Again, like I showed in the last video, it's just 5 connections. There's these 3 connectors. The focus pin or focus wire, you just pull this little yellow retainer clip up. The focus wire comes out. Then there's the G2 connection right there on the pin. So 5 connections. Then this comes off, and you can work on it unfettered, as they say. So before we just go straight to replacing the IC, I want to see if any pins read shorted that shouldn't. There should only be, I think, 2 ground pins, 3 ground pins, something like that. And we should not get any other readings to ground. So if we just go, there's a ground point right here on this connector. The very first pin, we'll just touch that to ground. And we'll go through here, and we should only get ground to pins that read 0. If we get anything else that reads other than 0, then there's our problem. So I don't know. I think this is pin 1 with the little dot here. So we'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, uh-oh. 98 ohms. 98 ohms is not what we should. Okay, so I'm sorry. I went one over by mistake. So there's our ground. 0 ohms. There's our ground. And, 98 ohms. Well, there's a problem. There's our ground. Oh, another one. 98. Ground. So that's a ground at 0. That's not supposed to be grounded. That's a ground at 0. That's not supposed to be grounded. Let's go back on the back side here. Zero, there's a ground. Uh-oh, 98. So we have 1. Hold on, let's do this again. That's a ground. 98. 1. 2. 3. We have 3 shorted pins to ground. Well, not shorted, they're 98 ohms. As a matter of fact, we have 3 pins that are 98 ohms to ground that shouldn't be. Yeah, 98.2 ohms. So, well, there's our problem. So now we have to remove that chip and verify that those pins don't still read 98 ohms to ground with the chip removed, because that's a very important step. You don't want to replace the chip if that's not the problem. But like I say, I've seen this occurrence before, and that was the issue. That's why I have all these replacement ICs here. So let's remove that. And I don't want to use a hot air station because there's caps here and a ferrite bead and other caps, and there's too much stuff around the area. And my desoldering station, like I use it, I'll clear out 2 holes, it clogs up. I gotta unclog it. I'll use it for 2 holes, it clogs up. I have to unclog it. It's just a piece of junk. So we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way with some braid, and turn my fan on so I don't breathe the fumes in directly. Secondhand fumes are okay because you don't get cancer as soon. You still get it, but you don't get it as early as breathing it in directly. So, all right, we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way and just use braid here. And we don't need flux because there's plenty of flux in the braid. If you get the right braid, this is what I use. Chemwick 10-50L number 4. This is what I use. It's got flux in the braid, so you don't have to add your own flux. A lot of the cheaper braid will work, but you have to add your own flux to it, and it's just gets messy and involved and time consuming and all that kind of jazz. So I mean, this, if you use the right braid, using a braid can be just as quick and or easy as using a desoldering station or gun, whatever you want to call it. So it's not going to be as quick, but it's not going to take you forever. So I mean, I've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes already taken out, so, or emptied. Now, of course, this braid can get a little expensive if you go through a lot of it, but expensive is a relative term. $5 to one guy could be a lot, where $5 to somebody else is throw it in the garbage. I don't need that $5. Get that out of here. You know, I forget what the reference is. There's some movie I saw or TV show. Some guy's counting his money, and he's peeling off hundreds, 100, 100, 105. What this? Get this out of here. What the hell? I forget what that is or what that was, but all right. So now we can go through, make sure these are all loose. Just kind of pop them. You'll hear it snap and pop when it breaks free. Well, there's one whole complete side already done. Would that take a minute, minute and a half? And we'll go back in here with a socket, just in case this is not the problem, which I know it will be. We can put the original chip back in, but I don't see us doing that. You also want to be careful that you don't press too hard. You want to use an iron that's nice and hot. I run my setup here about 800 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to use an iron that's nice and hot so the solder liquefies and melts quickly. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on the pad. And you don't want to put a lot of pressure, because some of these pads are thin and they're not attached to the PCB very well. So, like for instance, on the 7400, 7500, U2000, U5000 series of chassis, some of those solder pads are paper thin, especially around the vertical deflection chip. I think IC601. Some of those are pretty paper thin. So when you're trying to do your cap kit, it's incredibly easy to lift some of those pads and traces. So you want to be careful. You want to use an iron that's nice and hot, and you don't want to apply too much pressure. And you want to get on there, get the solder removed, and get off before it lifts the pad. Okay, got one left. There we go. Okay. I think that is good. Let's see if we can get this puppy off of here now. Should come right out. Okay, quick and painless. Voila. Now, let's grab a socket and let's see here. I'm pretty sure I don't have this exact one. I'm cheap and bought the wrong sockets here. So I think what we'll do is we'll use a 40 pin and just trim it up. It'll be fine. I can hear you clamoring. Put the right one in there. Put the right one in there. Well, I don't have the right one, and this will work just fine. Okay, so let's grab one of these out of here. Got 3 left. And if we compare the new one to the, I'm going to take a Sharpie here and mark on the old one just so we don't get them confused. Other than the solder, the obvious solder work on here being, well, obvious, but we're going to put an X across that one. But it is a, well, it's hard to tell. S1 Delta 2, S1 Delta 2, 600 Alpha 01-DO. And here we have the replacement, S1 Delta 2147 Alpha 01A0. Well, that's a different part number. However, it probably is superseded. I am not going to worry about it. Let's see if these... okay, wait a minute. Okay, I think I've got two different ones here. This, I'm glad I checked. Okay, so this one, let's get the hell out of here. This one is a different part number. This one is a Sierra 1 Delta 2147 Alpha. This one come out of there, you! This one is a Sierra 1 Delta 2500 Alpha, and that's what this one is. This one is a Sierra 1 Delta 2500 Alpha. Okay, so I have two different ones. I think these are for 9200. I think these are for the D9200, and these are for the D9400. I think that's what that is. That's why I have two sets of them. Okay, that makes more sense. All right, well, I'm glad I checked them. In all likelihood, the other one probably would have worked anyway, but I'm glad I checked. Okay. All right. So now what we can do is I am going to set our marked one aside, and we got our notch right there. We have our notch right there, so we're going to turn this around and just set this in place here in the socket. Or let's bend our legs a bit. I said a bit, moron. Not all the way. Okay. Now that is in there, let's push it down. I'm doing this to give the socket some stability because I'm about to, nope. Nothing is ever easy. Well, we'll fix it. We'll fix it later. I got a bent pin. Well, what we need to do is, I don't have the correct socket, so I got to perform some surgery, and it'll be fine. Don't worry. Don't you worry. We're going to cut it right about there. Cut that piece off, throw it in the garbage, and we're just fine here. So let's get this installed. I just want that socket, or that chip be in there, to be in there to hold this in place. The shape and the form, I mean, is why. It makes it easier to install. Okay, our notch is right there, so let's just see if we can work some magic here and get that to sit right in there. No, we gotta bend some of these out a bit. Okay, let's try this again. And success. All right. So that is now in. Make sure all of our feet have made it through. The last thing you want to do is solder it in and realize one of the feet's not through the hole. And that looks fine. Okay, so let's solder it in place. Feet don't fail me now. You know what I didn't do? I didn't test to make sure that the pads still weren't bad. Let's go to ground here, and you can hear the beep. So okay, that's 0 ohms. That's our ground. That's 100 ohms. And that's 100 ohms. Huh. Well, that's interesting. What pins is that? What pins are those? That is, let's zoom out. The plot is thickening. I appear to be incorrect in my, not hypothesis, hypothesis. I appear to be incorrect in my hypothesis. So what pin is that? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6 and 9 both read 100 ohms to ground. That's a ground. 6 and 9. Well, what does our good one read? Now this looks like one that I've replaced already. This one's got a bunch of solder rework and flux on here. I didn't even notice that. Well, this may be the one I'm referring to when I say I know what the problem was. So if we go to this one and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nothing to ground. 7, 7's our ground. 8, 9, nothing to ground. So 6 and 9, nothing to ground on the good one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 99 ohms, 7, 8, 9. So something is still wrong. Well, that's very interesting. Let's finish soldering this in. Then we'll remove the chip. I have to take it out anyway because there's a bent leg. And we'll continue troubleshooting. That is very interesting. Now, if I was any good at editing, I would just speed this up, but I'm not. Why aren't you? There we go. I'm not any good at editing, so you'll have to bear with me here while we go through this rather slowly. I'm going to turn it this way to get more surface area on these. There we go. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of people out there who like this kind of solder therapy, if you will, watching people do this kind of stuff. And hey, if that's what you like, then here you go. I was, like I said, I never said I was 100% positive. I said I was 99.97685% or something like that. So you never know until you test. That's why testing is important and knowing how to do it. So let's clean this up, make sure they don't have any bridges. I don't want to go to Terabithia or Madison County, so that should suffice. Okay. Now let's take a look here, make sure we don't have any bridges. A couple of these joints could be better, but looking at it, yeah, no bridges, everything looks perfecto. So, okay, now we can take our chip back out here. And there was one leg here that I put in all janky, so We'll fix that, no big deal. And with our chip out, it looks like I need to fix that socket there a bit, but it'll reconform itself. All right. So now with that out, we can see if we can figure out what's going on here. So it could be this chip. I hope not, because I don't have any of those. So with the chip out, let's see what it reads with no chip installed. So what was it? We'll go to ground here, and that's our, nope, the 100 ohms on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7's our ground, 0 ohms. 8, 9. And there was one over here too, wasn't there? Which pin is that? That is 29, 8, 7, no, it's 28. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. 23. 23, 6, and 9. So what is attached, let's just say, what's attached to 23? 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. We got a capacitor, we have a electrolytic and a film cap, and that runs to ground. So something on the ground circuit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is tied to 23 through this jumper. So something on the ground circuit is shorted. Well, so much for this being a quick and easy fix. Gosh darn it. What is it? Something on the ground circuit is shorted. Well, it's going to come down to checking. I mean, it's not going to be an electrolytic. The likelihood of electrolytic being shorted, dead short, is extremely low. So let's just go through all the diodes. Diode checker, and let's just go through all the diodes. Because that's our most likely cause. One of these diodes is gone. Gone shorted. It's gone shorted. Look at that juice. It's gone shorted. We could also have a shorted transistor. That appears to be all the diodes. There weren't very many of them. So now we got to go through these transistors and see which one of these darn transistors is causing this. So we'll start with Q210. That one's fine. So base with the positive. How the heck are these both labeled Q210? We get a 210. Oh, that was 219. Okay, so this was 219. So 210. And these are all different NPN and PNPs. So, okay, this one has a negative on base. Okay, that one's fine. So those two are okay. Let's move on to Q208. 335, that's not a right reading. 335. I don't think that's supposed to read that way. But fortunately we have one here we can check here. 335. Well, okay, so that one's fine. All right. Ultimately, we're just trying to find a short. We're not necessarily worried about what they read as long as they're not reading shorted. So that one's okay. We got 3 more over here. 203. That one's fine. 218. Not sure how that one, there we go. Okay, well that's not shorted. 205, that was 205, was it? Or was that 218? That was 205. Okay, well now those are okay. Let's go to 215. That's fine. 217. That's fine. 220. That's fine. Huh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We got a zener diode shorted right here. Is it supposed to be shorted? It is. You rat bastard. Oh. I wouldn't say it's supposed to be shorted. I mean, it's not shorted. It's supposed to be reading shorted. This is 100% known good working neck board. I tested it in place of this one and I got a full, or all my image was fine. So apparently, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay. It is bad. I am no good at testing things. So you see here, 0.5 voltage drop. We go over to this one, shorted. What I was doing is my lead was accidentally touching this jumper right behind it. So testing it, you'll hear the voltage drop. I was like this. I was touching this back here. You just touch the leads, there's our voltage drop, 0.571. Now this one, you'll see I'll do the same thing, and it's shorted. So now we need to remove that zener diode, and I don't have any idea what this is supposed to be as far as the rating. So I don't know if I have one that I can slave in without robbing it from a working board. I don't know. I hate when they fold the leads over like that, because then I can't get the lead up. There we go. Sometimes you'll damage the pad by trying to use the iron, or lifting it when it's not hot. There we go. Success. Part of me is hoping the diode is not bad, because I don't know if I have one that I can replace it. Replace it with, I should say. So now we are out of circuit. And rather than check that diode, let's just go back to our chip here and go to ground and go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Open. 9. Open. 28, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Open. ZD201 shorted. And let's go with it out of circuit. Shorted. Well, how does that happen? That's weird. All right, now it is out completely. Let's open this hole up a little bit for the replacement. Okay. Sorry, chip. I misjudged you. I'm going to get a little denatured alcohol on the rag here, and we will bring you back to life and remove your stamp, and there we go, good as new. I'm sorry, little chip. You can forgive me. All right, so it's going back in. I misjudged you, little chip. Please don't hold it against me. So we're putting the original chip back in. We're trying to, anyway. There we go. Perfect. Absolute perfecto. Okay, well, now the hunt goes on. I need to look in the wiring diagram or the schematic. There is a difference. Schematic shows you a layout. Wiring diagrams show you the wiring and the components. So I am going to go look in the wiring diagram and the manual to see what the rating is for this and see if I can find a suitable replacement. If not, I'll have to steal the one from this board just so we can get this one going for the proof of concept for the video and replace this one later, or maybe just use this one for this chassis and fix this one later. Either way, let me do that. I'll come back and we'll see if I can find a replacement. Well, gang, today we are fortunate. Here I have a parts D9200 that I featured in the last video. You can see it's been pillaged of all the caps and various parts and pieces, flybacks removed. Of course, I still have it, but it was removed for other stuff. So anyway, I have all of these original parts. I still have the sync encoder board and the flyback and things like that. But this is a parts chassis. So it turns out through some research on the manual that lists out the parts, their ratings and part numbers and things, ZD201 here on the neck board that was faulty is a 9.1 volt, 5% half watt zener diode. And it's very important that you only replace the zener diodes with the correct voltage rating. You do not want to put, for instance, a 5.1 volt in place of a 9.1 volt or vice versa. So this is a 9.1 volt, 5% half watt zener diode. And it just so happens that on the main board here, ZD401 is the exact same rating. ZD401 right there, 9.1 volt, 5% half watt zener diode. And if we look around here, it even says ZD401. So same rating. So we're going to pillage this ZD401 off of this parts chassis main board, and we're going to replace it on our bad neck board. So let's see the best way to go about doing this. Let's just go this route. I thought for sure it was that encoder chip because that was the problem on this one. This one, I replaced it on this one because that was the problem on this one. And it's very common on the 74, 75, 2000, 5000s when you have color issues. It's very common for those to be bad on that too, but live and learn. You never know. That's why testing is so important. So ZD401, we'll snag this puppy out of here. Okay. I realize you can't see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. Let's, I definitely do not want to break that, so let's give it some persuasion here. Wait a minute, what did I just unsolder? Did I just unsolder the wrong thing? You guys are probably screaming at the camera, what are you doing, you dunce? I desoldered D401. That's D401. I need ZD401. No wonder I couldn't get it out. That would have been disastrous if I broke it trying to extract it. I was like, this should be coming out. What's going on here? But I'm a knucklehead. Okay, and you shouldn't use your soldering tip to do what I just did because you can damage the trace, but I don't really care about this trace because it's a donor chassis. Okay, now I bet it comes out. Hey, imagine that. Okay, so we shall set this aside. And let's get this diode installed. And I need my tweezers for this. Make sure you get it installed properly. There's a black line on these diodes, just like a standard diode, and it has to go just like a regular diode would with the black stripe on the line So there we go. And yeah, I don't like the way that's sitting in there. I need to get more of that leg down in that hole. There we go. Down in the hole. Feeling so full. I don't want this to fall, so I'm just going to try and tack it in there. Just tack it in. Just tack it in. All right. Now, let's measure, make sure it's still hot, so we'll give it a couple of moments here to cool down. I'm going to take my chip that we didn't use and put it back in the holder here. There we go, and I'll put my container back in its spot. Alright, so now that that's all done, let's measure this and verify that we have it installed properly. Again, you can see the little wavy line here indicating zener diode instead of regular diode. I'll show you here. You can see the little wavy line as opposed to the straight line. So we want to make sure that it reads negative on this side and positive on this side, and we get bleep, 0.5 voltage drop. Now the true test is going to be going to 6, 9, and 23, I think it was. So we'll go to ground right here. We'll go to continuity. We can hear beep, 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 beep. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Open to ground. Let's see, 9. Open to ground. 8 should be, I think 8 is ground. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is ground. But 6, 7, 8, 9, 28, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Our problem is solved. Well, we're hoping. So now it's time to put this back together and see if it works, and if so, then I'll cap it and reflow it later and add it to the repaired pile and call our second D9200 a successful repair. So, yeah, we'll let's see how that goes. All right, so neck board's reinstalled. We have our original encoder chip there in the new socket, and ZD201 has been replaced. So nothing left to do but really give it a try, see what happens. So let's do that. And I do have the other neck board here that we were using for contrast and compare readings just sitting right here. So that's right there. And I will say, admittedly, I was making the mistake earlier on testing this because I was running 2 signals at the same time. So what'll happen is if you're running, let's say I had VGA, I had the system turned on and the 16.1 was running. We had the VGA cable plugged in, and we also had the CGA EGA cable plugged in, and we were running the test pattern generator. So I was feeding this monitor 2 signals at the same time. They don't like that. But we know that we had an actual problem because you should have a no signal in on the screen when that occurs. And we'll test that and show that that is a true statement. So we actually did have a problem. We for sure absolutely had that shorted diode that was causing raster but no image, because when we had both signals at the same time, you should still get that no signal in. You weren't getting that. So we absolutely had a problem that we are pretty sure has now been resolved. But I was also creating a problem by running 2 signals at the same time. So for now, I have no signal at all. VGA is not plugged in and the test pattern generator is off. So now when we turn this on, if we see no signal in, then we know that we have fixed the problem. We have fixed the issue of raster but no image. But I say, again, part of that was due to me hooking up 2 signals at the same time, but we should have got the no signal in. So anyway, I know I've said that 3 times now and I get redundant, but anyway, so now what we need to do is turn this on and see and make sure we get no signal in. If we do, I have successfully repaired this issue or this problem. So here we go, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it turns on, and do we get no signal in? Yes, we do. Fantastic. So that's what you should get. So right now we're on VGA, And if we plug in the signal from the PCB, we should get, there it is. Awesome. Now, so to simulate what I was doing earlier by having both VGA and the CGA, EGA at the same time being fed to this, I should get, when I turn this on, I should lose the VGA, I should get no signal in. So here we go. Yeah, see, there you go. I wasn't getting that before. So obviously that wasn't a big issue, but with the fact that we weren't getting the no signal in means that we absolutely did have a problem with the neck board, which was caused by that diode. So anyway, you know, repeating myself, redundancy. You know, I was in the military for a number of years and I was used to working with idiots and I had to explain myself more over and over and over. So for some reason I still do that to this day. Look at that, fantastic, beautiful. So yeah, there we go. Let's disconnect VGA and we'll plug in the CGA EGA and we'll go through and test that out. Okay. Okay, standard res, here we go. Let's turn it on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it doesn't like that because we're way too bright. That's better. Okay. Let's turn this off and medium res. Medium res, fantastic. On-screen display, we'll hit the mode button and, oh, it's real dark. Gotta turn the flyback up a bit. There we go. Awesome, so there's that. Let's make sure we have on-screen display on standard res. Yep, there it is, fantastic. Now let's go back to VGA and make sure we have on-screen display on VGA. I forgot to do that, so we'll test it now. Okay, and there's VGA and fantastic. Fully functional, fully working D9200. Now again, all of these caps are original, so I'll do the cap kit and the reflow off camera, test it again, and you know, I'm assuming I don't make any mistake. We'll add this to the collection of working 9200s. So now, so far, we are 2 for 5. 2 for 5. We have 3 more to do. There we go, European 3. 3 more to do. No, European 3 was this. I forget. Anyway, so 3 more to do, and they are going to be a little bit cumbersome. So like I say, I went through and tested these to make sure and see what was going on with them prior to the repairs, so I knew what to expect and what we needed to work on. And this one worked. It just had just the raster but no image, and we found out today that it was due to the ZD201 being shorted. So stay tuned for the other 3. Like I said, I'm going to put those on the back burner. I got about 9 or 10 different chassis that need to be repaired in the meantime, so those 3 other 9200s are going to go on the back burner. I'll get these other ones fixed and come back to these later once all the madness has been taken care of. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next 3 9200s at some point in the future.